Now that we've taken a good look at what constitutes news, what is not news, and how you go about developing news ideas on your own, what I'd like you to do is an assignment that hopefully will help you to focus more on how do you identify what news is and how you come up with it on its own. So once you finish the video and you go to assignment number 2, step 5, if you open that up, you find that the assignment for this week is asking you to listen and watch and read many news stories, and there will be 3 elements to this assignment. You're going to need to complete all 3 portions by this coming Sunday at midnight and post those answers on Moodle in assignment number 2. So there's a general warning here. This project is not difficult at all. It actually just involves you listening to news stories or watching news stories, but altogether can be a bit labor intensive. So it could end up taking a couple hours altogether to listen to the news. So you want to pace your time throughout the week. You don't want to try to do it all right before midnight on Sunday. The first part is I would like you to listen to 3 podcast news stories. Now, podcasts, and we'll go over this later in the next week or two, podcasts can take on different forms. Some of them are simply people chit-chatting with each other. Some of them are interviews. The type of podcast we're going to be working on for this class are podcast news stories. They are stories that are told by somebody using multiple interviews, using editing techniques, and they typically have some news pegged to them. So what I've done here is given you 6 different blogs that do podcast news. Go online and find them. Just Google either Reveal, This American Life, Freakonomics, Radiolab, Invisibilia, or Planet Money, and scan through them and pick a podcast that they've done on a topic that might be interesting to you. You're going to do this 3 times. And each time you listen to them, this is the information I'd like you to provide afterward. For each of the 3, I'd need the title of the podcast. I would like you to write a 2 to 3 sentence summary of the podcast. Explain which beat from that list of beats that I gave you a reporter would be on if he did this type of story. And then explain which of the news elements make this news. So indicate whether it is a story of impact, conflict, novelty, prominence, proximity, or timeliness. And then lastly, comment on whether the storyteller, from your perspective, was a reasonable journalist. Were they accurate, fair, and unbiased? Okay, so that's part 1. You're going to do 3 different stories. These stories oftentimes could be 15 minutes long. They could be each a half an hour long. They might be an hour long. I would say probably avoid doing the hour-long ones, but they could be interesting. So you're going to do 3 of them. So that will take up quite a bit of time as you listen through them. Now for part 2 of this assignment, you're actually being asked to look at TV news stories. So you can go to any TV news website. That could be locally to My Fox Detroit, Channel 2. You could go to WDIV, click on Detroit. You can go to Channel 7, WXYZ. You can go to the national networks. You could go to the website of abc.com, abcnews.com, or cbsnews.com, or nbcnews.com, or cnn.com, or foxnews.com. Pick any of those websites. You can go to multiple websites, but the purpose of this assignment is that you use the TV news to find examples of these types of stories. There are 12 categories, so you'll have to find an example of each of these categories. An environmental type story, a government story, police or court story, education story, a consumer story, a health story, a business story, politics, entertainment, religion or spirituality, sports, and technology. So for each example, what I'd like you to do is find and list the following. For each category, I want you to name the category that comes from. So let's say first you found a politics story. So you would write politics. Then copy and paste the headline of that story and the first paragraph of the story. If there's no transcription with the video that you found, then you're going to have to write your own headline and a 1 to 2 sentence summary of the story. Then you would have to say which news elements were part of the story. So did it have impact, conflict, novelty, prominence, proximity, or timeliness? You will comment on whether the storyteller was a responsible journalist, were they accurate, fair, and unbiased? And also I'd like you to copy and paste the URL of the story. That way, if I have any questions about it, I can just click on it and go back and look into it. So you're going to do this 12 times for this part. For part 3 of this assignment, what I'd like you to do is use the examples above that you gathered from the TV news and pick just 3 of them. And with those 3 examples, what I'd like you to do is think about how you could further develop each of those stories. What we're looking at is how you could advance a story. This is a critical thinking skill that journalists need to do when they're coming up with story ideas. This is one way they come up with story ideas. So this is what I'd like you to do. For each of the 3 stories that you pick, I first want you to think about how you personally, if you were assigned this story, how you could develop it further. How you could report something additional from what has been reported so far. What they might have left out of that story that you could report further to make it a new story for yourself. To do that, you have to think of things like, is there a way to update it for future? Maybe it was a story about a meeting where they were going to be voting soon on an issue. Maybe your update would be when you went back to report that they voted on it and approved it. Or will there be a different angle to the story that they didn't develop enough? Maybe they did a story about a particular disease and they focused on one girl who's fighting that disease. Maybe you feel that you'd like to further pursue just that one girl and what happened to her after that treatment. So your new angle to the story would be young girl successfully battles a disease after a new treatment. Or you might think maybe there's a part of the story that was left untold that I just didn't get to know enough about. Maybe they just mentioned just casually something about the economy has taken an upturn while they're doing another story, and you decide you want to do a bigger story about why the economy appears to be having an upturn. How would you pursue that story? Okay? So the first part of what I want you to do with each of the 3 is to pick an element that you think you could advance. Okay? Come up with a way you could advance the story that you just saw on TV. After you've done item number 1, then say to yourself, okay, if I'm going to advance it in that direction, who would I need to interview to be able to do the report that I want to do? I'm not asking you for a person's specific name or to research the specific name. I'm just saying, what would their stake in the situation be? What would their title or position be relative to this type of story that you want to do? Okay, so all I'm looking here is the type of person that you would need to interview for this fully developed story that you were going to pursue after the one you saw. And then the third element of what I'd like you to do is tell me how you'd actually go and track down this person. What resources are you going to use to find the information to get to this person? Give me websites that you would look at. Tell me how you would find phone numbers or how you could possibly track down this person to get to that person to tell this more fully developed story. You do this part on 3 examples. So those are the 3 parts of assignment number 2. How do you submit them? Well, what I'd like you to do is write all your answers on a Word document. I would like you to combine all the answers for parts 1, 2, and 3 on that Word document. And after you've done all those parts, I would like you to save your file with your last name and assign 2. So for example, if I was saving my document, it would say Shafran assign 2. After I've saved it with that title, then I post that here on Moodle. Now, if you prefer to submit it as 3 separate pages, that's fine. You could also submit it as 1 page. You can do either of those things on your spot on Moodle. Again, this assignment is due Sunday by midnight. You don't want to wait until Sunday at 10 o'clock because there's a lot of work to do to finish it.